All right, it's official. So the top story today, at this moment, Tuesday, December 7th, is from The Information. They say they have sources, that means a leak, that a secret deal has been struck between some dude named Tim Cook and some country called China. Brokered in 2016, paved the way for Apple's success by promising to invest just a little bit of money in China. So apparently, according to these sources, Tim Cook struck a deal in 2016 that paved the way for Apple's success by promising to invest just a little bit of money, just 275 billion, about a little more than $250 billion into the country's economy. That's the headline. I'm going to pin it to the top of the Clubhouse room. Cheryl's going to share it at the top of the Twitter space room for everybody over there. And let me go ahead and pin this so you all know where we're coming from. Click, 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 bada boom, bada bing. There it is. Facing hostile Chinese authorities, Apple CEO signed a $275 billion deal with the CCP. Let's read this one together, shall we? It says, in interviews and internal Apple documents, and by the way, Apple's an incredibly secretive company, so it would be very interesting to know how this got out, especially as it was, initiated in 2016. Internal documents provide a behind-the-scenes look at how the company Apple made concessions. Jesus Christ, can somebody mute their mic, please? Fran, thank you. So, a behind-the-scenes look at how the company made concessions to Beijing and won key legal exemptions. Yeah, it's called T-money. It's called doing business in Asia, everywhere from India to China and everywhere in between. There's a thing that we don't do in the Nordics at all, which is called paying the little T-money, the little kickbacks. And this happens at all stages of government, even at the highest levels, as this article is clearly going to lay out for us. CEO Tim Cook.
So this is the price of tea in China.
Well played, Demolaire. The CEO Tim Cook, I've heard of this guy, personally lobbied officials over threats that would have hobbled its devices and services. Like it would be a shame if something happened to your little smartphone business over here. His interventions paved the way for Apple's unparalleled success in the country. Apple's iPhone recently became the top-selling smartphone in China, its second biggest market after the U.S., for the first time in 6 years. But the company owes much of that success to CEO Tim Cook, who laid the foundations years ago by secretly signing an agreement established to be worth more than $275 billion with Chinese officials, promising Apple would do its part to develop China's economy and technological prowess through investments, business deals, and worker training. Tim Cook forged the 5-year agreement, which hasn't been previously reported, during the first of a series of in-person visits he made to the country of China in 2016 to quash a sudden burst of regulatory actions against China's business. It would be such a shame if your smartphone business wasn't going to happen in China. Here's your bill, sir. According to internal Apple documents viewed by The Information, before the meetings, Apple executives were scrambling to salvage the company's relationship with Chinese officials. There's one way to solve that. Who believed the company wasn't contributing enough to the local economy. Sir, Tim, welcome to China. We love you. You're amazing. We understand you want to do business here. You're going to make $1 trillion. And we don't feel like you're doing enough to the economy. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You feel me, bro? You see where I'm going? Tim, you got me? You feel me?
You feel me, comrade? You feel me, comrade?
Comrade Tim, we are, we like to share the wealth of the economy here, sir. We are, social prosperity. We like to share the prosperity here. And amid the government crackdown and the bad publicity that accompanying it, iPhone sales plummeted. And the article goes on and on about how Tim had to pay a rather hefty T-money of $275 billion to keep the spices flowing in China. facing hostile Chinese authorities, Apple CEO signed a $275 billion deal. Wow.
That seems like a steal, though, given how much they're worth now and how much they've been able to leverage the Chinese economy. I don't see anyone here in America being able to assemble 1,000 iPhones in a day. I'm lucky if I can repair one iPhone in a day. So definitely, it's a very competitive market, and it's a great place for Apple to have amplified their reach.
Yeah, quite the story people are tweeting. A lot of people tweeting about it. Other sources, because it's the information is the publication who is exposing this. Apple Insider has done a piece on it, a follow-up piece saying Apple made a secret 5-year deal for $275 billion. If it's a 5-year deal, that means it expires in about 23 days. And 9 to 5.
I wonder how big the new deal is, because if this deal is expiring, they most likely had to sign a backroom or backdoor kind of deal to be able to do the next 5 or 10 years. So I wonder if that's going to be like 2 or 3 trillion or something like that. It's probably going to be huge.
Wait.
Yep.
I was thinking, isn't this coincide a little bit with when the Department of Justice met with Apple, Microsoft, and Facebook for all of these things? Do you think that they're making a deal with Apple in lieu of this, knowing that the deal was going to end this year, or could the two be mutually exclusive?
We don't know. I think it's really interesting that it's ending now. Apple is making lots of moves to shift production to Vietnam as we speak. So I will even find you proof of that by simply Googling Apple.
I feel like the US government is making a big play to keep it in house, and obviously just like with allies, I should say.
So check this out.
Yeah.
So November 26th, which was 2 weeks ago, the headline from Reuters was exclusive. Foxconn, which is the biggest assembler of Apple products globally, based in China, Foxconn to shift Apple production to Vietnam, was the exclusive headline from Reuters. So let's take a look at that article. And now keep in mind what we learned 5 minutes ago, which is very useful additional context to this article that came out 2 weeks ago. It says Foxconn is moving some iPad, MacBook assembly to Vietnam from China at the request of Apple, said a person with knowledge of the plan, as the U.S. firm diversifies production to minimize the impact of the China-U.S. trade war. The development comes as the outgoing administration of U.S. President Donald Trump encourages U.S. firms to shift production out of China. During Trump's tenure, the U.S. had targeted made-in-China electronics for higher import tariffs and restricted supplies and components produced using U.S. technology to Chinese firms it deems a national security risk. Taiwanese manufacturers, wary of being caught up in the tit-for-tat trade war, have moved or are considering moving some production from China to countries such as Vietnam, Mexico, and India. Foxconn is building assembly lines for Apple at its plant in Vietnam's northeastern Bac Giang province to come online in the first half of 2021, the person said, declining to be identified as the plan was private. The move was requested by Apple, the person said. It wants to diversify production following the trade war. Hot shit right there. And by the way, there's other really interesting, before we get into the other big headlines, people have been tweeting in all kinds of really interesting tweets, as we often do here. And I just want to share a couple of those tweets because they're potentially relevant here. For example, here's one from some guy named Cal Patel, who joins us every day, or used to. And his article from the Financial Times says, China is faltering, but the world is not feeling the effects. That's the headline from Financial Times today, just hours ago. And it says, the link between the country's growth and other economies started to loosen before the pandemic, but watch the first opening line here from the Financial Times. It says, this is from Morgan Stanley Investment Manager's chief global strategist. sounds kind of qualified to be writing an article about this, as his name is Ruchir Sharma. Again, Morgan Stanley's chief global strategist. Might be worth paying attention to what this dude has in mind about the China and U.S. He says, first sentence, China's surprisingly rapid slowdown is eliciting familiar warnings that as China goes, so goes the global economy. Only China may not matter as much as it once did. And that surprisingly rapid slowdown, as you've heard me say, is manufactured. And what's happening is the U.S. is working to withdraw as much from China as possible, as quickly as possible. So for the following reason, because China was a train moving full steam ahead, and they had been investing very heavily in the track up ahead, 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers ahead. And they're building full steam and they're going full steam. And how you could cause a bit of havoc would be to intentionally force them to correct course as quickly as possible. Because when you have that much momentum at that size going all in the same direction, if they have to do an immediate right turn, the whole thing goes over. The whole thing topples over, goes over the cliff, metaphorically, however you want to do it. And the way to do that is to simultaneously get as many economic allies to withdraw business simultaneously. So that is happening. We're seeing that happening. We're seeing that in the headlines that we're reading here every day. So that's why Morgan Stanley's chief global strategist is saying, it's slowing down, at a pace that's, quite surprisingly rapid. Well, not really. If you kind of knew what the whole motives are behind the scenes, is China, by the way, is calling it economic terrorism. And they're not wrong. It is a form of kind of economic, I don't know that terrorism.
Barbarism, like pillaging,
It is an attempt to force them to self-correct more quickly than they can because of their size. Now, Lithuania could pivot because their scale is much smaller, but at the scale of China, it's very difficult to undo a system of that size to downscale that quickly. And that's where, it gets very uncomfortable, and you get a lot of, major companies having to default, and like we just saw with Evergrande, for example. So, again, keep those things in mind, and no doubt there will be more shakeout from this leading headline from the information that Tim Cook did this big deal with China. But I mention all of this because I remembered the headlines from 2 weeks ago that Apple is intentionally behind the scenes making Foxconn move their production from China to Vietnam. No doubt America is incredibly happy about that and might even be politely requesting, or maybe even subtly insisting, that Apple do that. And they might even be, Tim Cook is the, prior to taking over the seat of Steve Jobs, was the head of supply chains. So he, more than anyone, understands the need to become less dependent on China for critical stuff, because he knows that China has a bit of a history of, again, to counter, a bit of economic terrorism in withholding critical infrastructure. And this is not, this is just a reality in 2021. A lot of countries are doing this, but America got particularly upset when China was withholding masks during the early days of COVID, for example. And it's getting dark. Now, that leads to Thursday this week. 2 days from today, Joe Biden is hosting what he's calling the Summit of Democracy, the Democratic Summit of what is now 111 countries. And it's a lot of the friends of mine who all work at the UN, or this is the biggest topic of their conversation in recent days of what it's really all about. And we read a headline yesterday that as part of this massive Summit of Democracy of these 111 countries, and notably absent, of course, is Russia and China and Iran and, the usual suspects. But we will see, once that gets underway on Thursday, it's a virtual event with world leaders from those 111 countries about strengthening the ties of the democratic countries to work. And one of the top priorities of that event is how to deal with an open internet amongst the democratic countries. We read that headline 24 hours ago, did we not? And because there was a bunch of lobbyists who felt like, countries now talking with each other directly about, setting the open protocols for open democracies to share an open internet kind of works against some insiders in Washington. And they made that known publicly and spoke, on the record about that, how they're worried about how governments are going to do this without their input. And it'll affect, the companies that are filling their pockets. And they want to have some influence and have a voice at the table or a seat at the table. But, I shed no tears for the lobbyists who represent, big, powerful interests in wanting to shape internet policies. I think the countries, when you have, this summit of democracies of 111 countries, I think they're going to have a pretty high level, straightforward approach to working out those issues, which for the first time sort of need working out, because China, we're watching headlines of China expanding its very unique kind of form of the internet with the Great Firewall of China, and it's starting to impose that on Hong Kong for the first time is really wild to watch, because it's conceivably possible, and more than conceivable, we predicted they would do this in this room 9 months ago, and now we're watching them do it. And the regulars on stage can all attest to this, which is they're doing exactly what I said they would do, which is they're going to start enforcing first of all, the bordering territories like Hong Kong and Tibet and Inner Mongolia. And then it'll be interesting to see where it goes from there. It could potentially go into, most notably, somewhere like Pakistan, where they've made the incredibly large financial investments in infrastructure projects as part of the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. And might they require Pakistan to adapt to the Great Firewall of China? And they of course would sell it as a benefit, that we could remove anything negative that you as the government don't want to see. You don't want your people to see everything else. It's, by the way, it's very likely I would predict that it might come to Myanmar, Burma first, where China played a direct role in that military coup there. And the military is trying to control the media there. And they are shutting down the internet and are playing a really funny cat and mouse game with the locals there. And we know that because locals on the ground there in Burma come in this room and tell us this firsthand. And I live next door. So we know what's happening there. It'll be very interesting to see. So anyways, that first story from the information about the secret deal with Tim Cook, no doubt there will be updates about that in days to come. So we will watch with bated breath with those updates. Anyone with a comment on that before we go to the second story?
Did you talk about the story?
I think right now,
Hold on,
latest
Demler.
numbers say they roughly have one camera for every person in their country within their network, within their surveillance apparatus. And that is quite appealing to dictatorships and other governments that are perhaps not as open or democratic as they could be. So it's definitely going to be something that China exports. And just the sheer size of what they've been able to achieve, even us in the West have to be impressed. It's quite the achievement.
Okay. So somebody just sent me a DM that I want to respond to really quickly. If it's an accurate DM, hold on one second. I see a couple of friendly faces I gotta invite up on.
Real quick, I just wanted to ask, did you read the article about China saying that they're worried about the debt in Africa and all of that stuff? All right, cool.
Yeah, because a lot of African countries currently took on a whole lot of these massive infrastructure projects. We're talking hundreds of massive infrastructure projects that are hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm sorry, billions of dollars. And what happens? I mean, if the African countries default, we already know what happens, and the Sri Lankans know best of all what happens, because Sri Lanka lost in a very important deep sea port to China, which has now using that port militaristically off the coast of India. India, most of all, knows exactly what happens when Sri Lanka was unable to pay the loans, pay back the loans for these infrastructure projects. China took the port, and China's using the port militaristically and using it for toxic waste off 30 miles off the coast of India. India is totally irate about this, and that they're also taking back one of the hot issues in Africa is they're taking over one of the airports. In fact, I forget which country it is. Is it Uganda where they're taking
Uganda.
Yeah,
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 Uganda.
yeah.
they're
Messi,
taking
did I
That's
send it to TNA
Uganda.
Africa? I'm
yeah,
pretty
Yeah.
but they're
sure.
taking over the airport in Uganda. It's the only airport in Uganda, and they're taking it over. And that's a bit of a problem when a foreign country takes over your only airport. So, and oh, by the way, there's another article that somebody shared before we met, since we met last time. Here it is. Again, it's this very handsome man named Kal Patel shared this one from the Wall Street Journal. China seeks first military base in Africa. So, China's first military base on Africa's Atlantic coast. U.S. intelligence finds alarmed officials at the White House and Pentagon urge Equatorial Guinea to rebuff Beijing's overtures. Equatorial Guinea classified American intelligence reports suggest China intends to establish its first permanent military presence on the Atlantic Ocean in the tiny Central African country of Equatorial Guinea, which is just right there near Cameroon and Nigeria. And the officials declined to describe details of the secret intelligence findings, but they said that the report raised the prospect that Chinese warships would be able to rearm and refit opposite the east coast of the United States, a threat that is setting off alarm bells at the White House and Pentagon. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly.
Go ahead.
Or did you have? Yeah. So I just wanted to say quickly that I've been playing ski around, just looking at all the different places that are investing in Africa, and it's intriguing to see how what China's partaking in what some people will call like a neo-colonialist aspect, but also there's India investing and also American investment companies pouring huge amounts of money into Africa, and I wonder how that plays out on land and inland with the locals as well, because if it's like a depth thing that's gonna hurt Africa, it could turn Africa to a continent of Haiti, and that could change drastically the trajectory of Africa for the next century at least. Knowing what we know about Haiti and Afghanistan and just all of these other places.
Here's what gets weird: is if a lot of these African countries decide to if they don't pay back these loans, and simultaneously you get there's hundreds of these massive projects and these massive loans,
And they're not profitable as well. Like
right?
they
Well, my point is if the African countries all simultaneously say, you know what, we're not going to pay the loans, and you can't take the collateral for the loan is this bridge or this hydroelectric dam or this airport or what have you. What's going to happen if they all default simultaneously? Again, hundreds of massive infrastructure projects, and the US and Europe and NATO say, we got your back. China, don't even think about taking this airport or hydroelectric dam or port or what have you. And then Africa rises up together with the West and tells China, you're going to have to take a loss on all of these hundreds and hundreds, maybe even 1,000 plus loans, massive loans. And China can't eat all of those losses simultaneously. It would just be catastrophic for China. And might the U.S. knowingly orchestrate that? Well, here's a hint. When the G7 happened in Scotland 2 months ago, one of the things that was put on the table and brought in, to the fore was the idea of offering these African countries alternatives to the loans from China. And they agreed to do that because they know that the only reason the only reason that those African countries are taking those loans because it's the only loans that are being offered to them, and they're rather predatory loans. They're debt traps, and the African countries know they're debt traps, but they feel like they don't have any other option, And so the US and the EU are getting together and offering them much more equitable loans. So there's a bit of a hint that this is clearly in the minds of the West as to, the
And hey, Tyler,
yes.
Yeah,
it's ironic that China learned all of this from the U.S., which did the same thing in the 50s, 60s, 70s in
Fair,
loaning to
fair,
Central and South American governments primarily, and
fair play.
it's not. I'm not saying it's equal or fair, but I'm just saying
No.
it's a tactic that's
I'm using an
proven.
Irish phrase of fair play, meaning your comment is fair game. It's more than appropriate to share that important contextual historical point in the conversation, which is indeed it sounds like I'm sure to some people it sounds like that I or other people on this stage are anti-Chinese, and I assure you that's not the case. My last girlfriend was Chinese, and her parents didn't speak English, and we lived
No,
together.
I've always known you're anti.
yeah, like this isn't an anti-Chinese pod one at all. Yeah, just
And
wanted to say.
my point is that the current government is behaving rather bullishly in a way that, as Evan says, the U.S. had done in a way that most of the world didn't. I mean, South America, Central America was aware of how America was behaving in not so different ways through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and in some ways even more relatively recently.
I mean, I'm not making equivalents here. I'm just, people may not be aware, younger people.
Yeah.
We assassinated leaders.
Yeah.
We overthrew governments.
Yeah.
I mean, we were, extending our sphere of influence into South America in ways that were just wild and crazy in today's context.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but Tyler, empires do these things.
Yes.
This is nothing new. It's
Right.
been happening since the time of the Romans. So it's just, but what's new now is that the countries people have been exploiting, then learning that who they should do things with, and their resources are much more valuable than they realized. And
Yeah,
so,
One other point worth putting on the table, which is the U.S. is concerned about China because of its own selfish interest, that if left unchecked, China will amass incredible influence on the world stage and
and
surpass.
supersede
yeah.
US.
Oh,
Correct.
You know,
and
Correct.
another
you
point
just
would
look at the
be
patterns. Look
Yes.
the
at the
fact.
patterns.
So I just want to be transparent about why the U.S. is, making the moves that it is. It doesn't want to lose its spot at the head of the table, and at the same time, it's going to make the points that some would say demonize China in some capacity of, oh, by the way, another massively relevant article that came out moments before we opened the room that it speaks directly to this issue. The U.S. formally, diplomatically boycotts the Beijing Games.
Exactly, Tyler. But not only
Yes.
that, surely, can I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
Hearing what you all have been saying in the room so far, it seems to me that America is not going necessarily down that old colonial imperialistic kind of route, because it's bringing together people, for instance, at the last G7, as you were saying, and also in this new summit that's coming up this weekend, admittedly virtual summit about democracy. And it could well be that this is the way the US can gain international support for some of these things without having to go ahead and, get the nuclear bombs going, So,
Yeah.
so there's a different way that's happening just now, wouldn't you?
Yeah, like I feel that China, I'm not China, sorry, the US is moving from the global minister of democracy, which is obviously super dark if you know about.
Demolaire, we lost you.
Oh, am I not here?
You're there. No.
I just wanted to say, like, this Africa game that's being played between all of the global superpowers, like, obviously I have stock on it because I'm African, but at the same time, I don't know who's going to win and who's doing it for the right reason. Like, everyone's doing it for their own personal reasons, right? But what we've been seeing is that there are predatory loans being handed out, and there's people that want to win for the sake of capitalism and, democracy, as it were. So
For sure.
it is what it is.
So I want to hand it to, is it Clinton? Has his hand up over in Twitter Spaces. Go ahead, Messi, and then after you, Messi, let's go to Clinton. Go ahead.
Yeah. One thing I also wanted to add is that we Africans also don't have a good negotiators. So if you look at, for example, the debt financing in Uganda, that was just for the $200 million dollars debt that they were borrowing to build something that they gave the airport as collateral. And the argument they are giving now is that the transportation of whoever signed up that is saying that they didn't actually even see the terms that the airport can over they defaulted in paying. And if you compare that, for example, with Kenya, which the Mombasa airport, the Mombasa port, that the seaport that they were using as collateral when they were borrowing. At least what they are claiming, the negotiators are claiming, is that they wouldn't be giving them the port if they defaulted, because they did have earlier financiers that have a say that they wouldn't, that the China later on they came in as a follow-on investment, I think, saying that they at least would have to agree with the earlier investors, which those earlier investors don't even have the collateral of the port. At least that's the claim. So what I'm just trying to get at is we really don't have the terms. Like the millionaire was saying that we everybody is coming to Africa. To wherever they go, they also go for their own best interest. So we need to have our own people who put into their country into their best interest. So it would be really a good thing sometimes if we involve in people who have competencies instead of sometimes maybe even corruptions or shortcut and other things, and even take advantage of the increased interest between the West versus the East kind of financing that's coming into the continent. That's all.
Okay.
There is some good news, though. So some aspects of the government, like even the Department of Defense, are now engaged in activities that are helping Africa increase its financial literacy, because I think that's also a big factor here, that predatory loans, even though they're common or known by all of us, it's not necessarily the case over there. In Africa, it's at the scale of countries. So it's interesting to see that the Department of Defense is funding, for example, stories, novels, authors who are writing about, a young girl in Africa, and pick whatever country you want, and she's struggling to grow up. She wants to do something for her community, but it's this Chinese government that is making it difficult for her people to support themselves. And so that's an interesting narrative that they're presenting there.
Okay, now I want to...
Clinton, do you want to speak, Clinton? Yeah. Just unmic and speak. If not, you will have no chance because the regular will keep jumping in.
Yeah, Clinton's not aware that we are regular folks who don't... We meet every day and we don't raise our hands. So he can feel free to unmic anytime he wants. Okay. So,
I did not realize. Sorry about that.
No worries. Go ahead.
You have to jump in.
Yeah, so my name is Clinton DeVoe. I'm from Canada. Right now I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm a writer with the Ottawa Hill Times, as well as Troy Media. Fascinating discussion. To someone's earlier point, it is a common, unfortunately, by the way, it's a common fact that in many nations, specifically Uganda and some others, that often people are not reading contracts when they sign these deals with Beijing. And that often what ends up happening, and I'm sure this is no surprise to anyone here, that there is a funneling of money that exchanges hands in order to enrich a handful of individuals. And then you end up airports by Beijing. I also think it's important to, the reality is that I don't believe the United States going forward can act as a legitimate counterbalance to Beijing, and that's just because of the demographics of the age of the population, those kinds of things. That's not to say that the United States still will not continue to be the world's predominant military superpower, but on the economic side, things are beginning to wane as other parts of the world, develop more manufacturing with more population growth. So I think one of the solutions to this question that is not just a problem for the United States or for the African countries, but quite frankly, Europe and Canada as well, been problematic in Canada now for some time, is that I believe the Western world is going to have to develop free trade agreements with India for a couple of reasons. The first one is that in order to not upset our population bases, people still want to be able to buy cheap goods at Walmart, unfortunately. And that is a political reality. And so if we can set up free trade agreements with India, and then you slowly introduce someone that's an advocate of tax increases, but there are times where I believe it is justified. So I think that, the introduction of tariffs for manufactured goods that are imported from mainland China, free trade agreements with India would help encourage a lot of that manufacturing sector to move to India. And I think that's really going to be the long-term solution.
Yep.
Because we're going to need India as an ally, not just vis-a-vis militarily when it comes to acting as a counterbalance to China, but we're also going to need India to help bring some stability to. What many people here may or may not know is that India has very good relations with Afghanistan that goes back decades. India has helped build infrastructure in Afghanistan, telecommunications, helped build roads, without all of those sorts of strings attached that Beijing has been doing.
Yep.
So I do think it's imperative for the African nations, as well as the rest of the global community, led by the United States, because the United States will continue to be a political leader, and militarily. And so I do think it's important for whoever's in the White House, whoever's in the Senate, the House of Representatives, to find a way to actually build permanent long-term relations with India, and help bring India into the global community. And I think that would be a huge help for the African nations, as well as the rest of us. Because if we don't do this, we're going to face some long-term problems that could be very scary, if Beijing is allowed to go unchecked. So I'll place myself on mute. This is a fascinating discussion.
Thanks, Clinton.
And just want to thank you for allowing me to share a few thoughts on that.
You're most welcome. We meet every day, and we go over all the top headlines every day. And I want to get into...
And can I concur
by the way,
with
Love the Hill,
what just
great
been
publication.
said, Tyler?
Enjoy reading it.
Yeah.
Britain is, as you know,
Thank you.
doing trade agreements with India already, and our government is.
You guys have a bit of
very
history,
close.
as I understand it.
A little bit of history, yes.
Yeah. Well, the key thing is we both play cricket.
A little bit of, and so I wanted to touch briefly, the New York Times and Reuters both reporting about the news in the recent hours of the U.S. boycotting the Beijing Games, the Winter Games. And specifically, it's not the athletes, it's kind of the government, so to speak. So it says neither President Biden, this is New York Times, neither President Biden nor American officials are going, but the Russian leader might. Of course he will. Xi and Big Daddy Vladdy are best buddies. So New Zealand says it decided months ago that its diplomats wouldn't be attending political. And the headline from the New York Times is quite interesting. It says, how many countries will follow the U.S. boycott of Beijing's Olympics? Several have signaled that they will find ways to protest China's human rights abuses, whether they declare a diplomatic boycott or not. And it starts listing, New Zealand and others. And in less than 2 months, China will open the 24th Winter Olympics in Beijing under a shadow of the coronavirus pandemic, and now also a diplomatic boycott intended to protest the host's repressive policies. The White House announcement today that it would send no official delegation prompted anger in Beijing, where Chinese officials on Tuesday once again vowed to retaliate. Quote, "This will only make people see the sinister intentions of the American side and will only make the American side lose more morality and credibility," said a spokesman for the China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a prominent columnist for state media, Chen Weihua of China Daily, which is one of China's few, and in fact the biggest of China's kind of state medias, bitingly expressed hope that Mr. Biden would live long enough to see China boycott the Summer Olympics to be held in Los Angeles 2028. Ouch! Oh, burn! That's a sick burn, China. That's not. I got to give it that one to you. That's a proper snap on that one. Oh shit! Hey, hope Biden lives long enough to see China boycott the Los Angeles Summer Games in 2028. Sick burn, China. Although the effect of Mr. Biden's decision on other countries remains to be seen, several have already signaled that they too will seek ways to express displeasure with China's policies while stopping short of prohibiting athletes from attending. The decision will be especially complicated for European nations, which have sharply criticized China's abuse of human rights and democracy in Hong Kong and Xinjiang. The European Union has just renewed for another year the business and travel restrictions it imposed a year ago on officials involved in the crackdown of Uyghurs and other Muslims in the Xinjiang province. And in July, the European Parliament, which often takes strong moral positions, overwhelmingly passed a non-binding resolution calling on the diplomatic officials to boycott the Winter Olympics, quote, "unless the Chinese government demonstrates a verifiable improvement in the human rights situation in Hong Kong, the Xinjiang Uyghur region, Tibet, Inner Mongolia, and elsewhere in China." Well, I mean, there's still 2 months. They could fix all of those, in a weekend, right? So, at the same time, many European nations have extensive trade ties with Beijing that they do not want to jeopardize, especially for a measure that is likely only to offend China and not change it. Fair enough. The Reuters article says that U.S. officials boycott Beijing Olympics over rights atrocities. And the quote is, Beijing threatened unspecified resolute countermeasures against any such move before Monday's announcement, preemptively to warn the U.S. not to do this, essentially, which is certain to further strain relations already at their lowest point in decades. President Joe Biden's administration highlighted what Washington says is a genocide against minority Muslims in China's western region of Xinjiang. China denies all rights abuses. Quote, "The U.S. diplomatic and official representation would treat these games as business as usual in the face of the PRC's egregious human rights abuses and atrocities in Xinjiang, and we simply can't do that," says White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. The athletes on Team USA have our full support. We will be behind them 100% as we cheer them on from home from the comfort of our sofas with a Oculus Quest. And the move comes despite the efforts to stabilize ties with a video meeting last month between Biden and Uncle Xi. China's embassy in Washington called the boycott political manipulation that would have no impact on the games, as no invitations had been extended to U.S. politicians. Russian President Vladimir Putin is the only leader of a major country who has accepted an invitation. The Chinese mission to the United Nations said the move reflects the Cold War mentality of the United States. Quote, "The U.S. just wants to prioritize sports, create divisions, and provoke confrontation." A statement from the mission said this approach will find no support and is doomed to fail. One last quote, the Australian and Japanese governments said they were also still considering their position for the games. Quote, "We will consider matters such as the meaning of the Olympic Games and our diplomatic relations and would like to make our own decision based on what is best for our national interests," as Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and New Zealand's Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson said his country would not send government officials, but that decision was based largely on COVID-19 concerns. Sure, of course. "We've made clear to China on numerous occasions of our concerns about human rights issues," Robertson told reporters, according to the state broadcaster TVNZ. And while we're on the topic of Chinese journalism, because it was the China Daily who gave that sick burn to Joe Biden that they hope he lives long enough to see China ban the LA games in 2028. Today happens to be the 1-year anniversary of Bloomberg's Chinese correspondent going to jail. And we have to credit Cheryl with finding this. Or Cheryl, do you want to reveal your source for how you found that article as a brilliant find? Because I did not know, I don't think anyone that's in this room know, that Bloomberg, who's been having real difficulty covering China lately, and yes, yours truly, has been giving Bloomberg a whole lot of shit for their incredibly subpar coverage of China in recent months, where we happen to find out way more of what's actually happening there than Bloomberg has consistently. And I'll be honest, very surprisingly, we couldn't figure out, why is Bloomberg incapable of covering China? What's going on? It was really peculiar. Evan, you can confirm this was a regular issue, especially during the Evergrande issues.
I think they might have been one step above the New York Times in your critiques.
Right. But we now understand there's a critical piece of information has been revealed, which is Bloomberg did have someone on the ground in Beijing. And you heard me say many times, hey, Bloomberg, what's wrong with you? Don't you have anybody on the ground in Beijing? Did I not say that at least a dozen times over the past 4 months? And then we find out today that Bloomberg did have somebody on the ground in Beijing who has been in jail for the last year. And today is the 1-year anniversary of her incarceration in Beijing. And that's why they've been having such a hard time covering China, because they can't risk saying what's actually going on there for fear that their team member there will never see the light of day again.
Yeah, I just want to jump in there and defend some of my colleagues. I don't know anybody personally with Bloomberg, but what I will say is that what you've just described is a common theme, and it's something that many people in the West really haven't figured out, or for whatever reason they're just not paying attention. And that's that journalists that are based in Beijing or Shanghai or some other places in mainland China are very reticent to do any sort of negative or critical stories about China's position when it comes to foreign affairs and military issues. And that's because often there are people that are held captive, and often they're randomly picked up. So, for example, in Canada, we had what are commonly referred to as the two Michaels. They were randomly picked up almost 3 years ago, and they were held captive.
Oh, yeah.
And just recently released.
Oh, because you know this intimately, because it was essentially a retaliation for Canada holding the CFO from Huawei, Meng.
Yeah. So what happened in Canada was that there was an agreement between Canada and the United States that, along with other countries, where if somebody commits a crime or something along those lines, that there's extradition processes that are in place. And so Canada was asked to arrest the head of Huawei and facilitate eventually a move back into the United States so that this person could face various charges and these sorts of things. And so what ended up happening was, immediately upon the arrest of and we were following all global legal precedent. Immediately upon the arrest, multiple Canadians were randomly picked up, and essentially, for all intents and purposes, were facing torture. And so my point is outfits like Bloomberg, along with many others, including Canadian news agencies, are often very concerned about reporting stories in such a way, because they know that Beijing will behave in a way that is absolutely abhorrent to the traditions and customs of the rest of Asia, the rest of Europe and North America. So this goes back, and politically, this goes back to my earlier point about the India thing. And sorry to sound like a broken record here, but one of the reasons why it's and this ties into the Olympic thing as well. One of the reasons why it's really important to set up these trade deals with India is in order to encourage that manufacturing to go there. Because what gives Beijing all of its political power is its economic might. And so if you weaken Beijing economically, then it puts us in a position of strength. And furthermore, just to tie this back into some of the terrible behavior from Beijing, I mean, often we have forgotten what has occurred in Hong Kong over the last 2 years. I mean, Hong Kong has essentially been decimated by Beijing. And, one of the things that Western nations perhaps should have done, which they didn't, was while that was happening, they should have immediately recognized Taiwan as an independent nation. And, but we didn't do that. So anyways, I'll place myself back on mute.
But I want to point out even just one quick point. Even the international old countries recognize Taiwan. That won't help Hong Kong at all, from my point of view, because historically Hong Kong is part of China. That's something for sure. That's very different from the situation we Taiwanese have. So that's my point. Thank you.
Alrighty.
It's like that old
I
joke
wanted to.
from the Russian era of the Cold War, comrade. You have freedom of speech, not necessarily freedom after speech, and that's definitely, I think, the approach with the news in China. But that kind of censorship, I think, is also, let's put it into some perspective. They have something like 80,000 protests against their own government each year. So China not only has a very fast-growing economy, but they also have a very dynamic population that sometimes is a little bit uneasy. So just to balance out some of the stories here.
Demolaire, and then we're going to get into the next headline. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add just the interplay between China, New Zealand, and Australia. As that we all know, I believe there was a article from about 4 months ago where China changed their trade agreements from New Zealand to Australia, or the other way around, with coal and wine. So it seems, and it's obviously they have a free trade agreement with both those countries, but that shift created a little bit of a disparity between their relationships. So now with this Olympic thing, seeing how politicized the Olympics have been in the past 50 years, it's now a little game that's being played to see who will back China. So there's a lot of massaging of relationships that's actually going on as well. So when we hear from these countries, it's apt to take it with a little bit of salt, because they are trying to keep their trade, because they are the most closest with China in terms of how they get the money and how they get their trade.
Okay, so Cheryl kindly tagged the article about the Bloomberg's, Chinese journalist who's been in jail for the past year, Miss Hay. Her name's Hayes Fawn, and you can see her photo both at the top of the Clubhouse room and then the Bloomberg article at the top of the Twitter Spaces room. Thank you for pinning those, Cheryl, and let's hope she gets out sooner than later. And the next article, because we've actually only covered one article thus far today, number 2 from the New York Times. It says, ahead of a congressional hearing, which is going to happen this week, as I recall, Adam Mosseri, the boss of Instagram, outlines forthcoming parental controls for Instagram, including monitoring time spent and deleting posts in bulk. And Instagram itself, the New York Times wrote their article, but the source of their article is a post that Instagram itself made by Adam Mosseri, head of Instagram. And I will share Adam's post that the New York Times is simply, kind of reporting. Let's just go to the actual source and see what it says rather than read the New York Times' take on it. And it says, raising the standard for protecting teens and supporting parents online, from Adam Mosseri, head of Instagram, December 7th, today. At Instagram, we've been working for a long time to keep young people safe on the app. As part of that work, today we're announcing some new tools and features to keep young people even safer on Instagram. From what I understand, that's not entirely true. What they're planning is for new tools to come out soon. And so why announce today that something's coming out soon? Well, because he's going to go before the Senate this week, and he wants to be able to say, oh, well, by the way, Senator, perhaps you saw the headlines that we actually just announced we have some new tools coming for parents to help moderate kids' stuff. How convenient. And I'm sure they would love to release those tools today and make those all live today. But if you can't, well, you might as well do the minimum and announce that they're coming very soon so that it improves his position and when he's sitting in the hot seat in front of the senators, kind of showing them how to log onto the internet and reply all in an email and use the tab key and give them, the 101 basics of how to use a computer, as typically happens when these tech CEOs appear before senators. But he continues to say in his piece, we'll be taking a stricter approach to what we recommend to teens on how the app will stop people from tagging or mentioning teens that don't follow them. That's very good. We'll be nudging teens towards different topics if they've been dwelling on one topic for a long time. And we're launching a take a break feature in the US, UK, Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, which we previously announced. Yeah, but you can't help but remind everyone of that as you go into your Senate hearing. We'll also be launching our first tools for parents and guardians early next year. See, they're announcing now that they're going to announce next year, which is weird. They don't normally do that, but he needs to do this because he's going before the Senate this week. We're going to do it next year to help them get involved in their teens' experiences on Instagram. Parents and guardians will be able to see how much time their teens spend on Instagram and set time limits. And we'll have a new education hub for parents and guardians, right? Because some senator's going to say, well, couldn't you limit the amount of time that kids spend on your app? And he's going to say, that's a genius idea, Miss Feinstein. In fact, we are doing exactly that. You can see it on my post yesterday, as reported by the New York Times. And yeah, so, I mean, this is the PR game that they're in. Adams is a smart dude. Long story short, no doubt, I can almost guarantee that as we switch over to the New York Times version of this, the New York Times is going to mention the whistleblower, Frances Haugen, and that this Senate, they're going to remind everybody of, that this probably has something to do with the Senate hearing that was inspired by Frances Haugen, the whistleblower. So it says Instagram will introduce its first parental controls in March as it faces pressures to do more to shield its young users from harmful content and keep them from overusing the product. Adam Mosseri, the head of the app inside Meta, the parent company of Instagram and Facebook, said in a blog post that parents would be able to see how long their teenage children have spent using Instagram and limit the amount of time they spend on the app. Teenagers will also be able to tell their parents if they have reported someone for a violation of Instagram's policies. Quote, this is the first version of these tools. We'll continue to add more options over time. Mr. Mosseri is scheduled to appear before a Senate committee on Wednesday. That's tomorrow. And he is expected to field questions about whether social media harms children and teenagers. The app has been under new pressure since Frances Haugen, a former Facebook product manager, leaked documents that showed the company was aware that Instagram makes teenager girls feel worse about themselves. Well, no. Again, New York Times, you are supposed to be the journal of record. And again, you're intentionally not being as specific as you really should be if you're going to be intellectually honest. Goddamn well, New York Times, who wrote this piece, by the way? David McCabe. David, you know perfectly well that the slide from which that data point came from makes it perfectly clear that in the vast majority of instances, Instagram makes teenage girls feel much better about themselves on nearly every possible thing you could imagine, except for one particular instance about how it makes them feel about their self-body image, how it makes them feel about their finances and their family and their friends and their health and their this and their schooling and education. All that makes them feel better about themselves. So when you say that they're aware, that Instagram is aware that Instagram makes teenage girls feel worse about themselves, no, it doesn't. Overwhelmingly, in 95% of instances, it makes them feel much better about themselves, according to the young girls they surveyed. So please, New York Times, I'm begging you yet again, please, please, please stop being intellectually dishonest. You are on a daily basis tarnishing the reputations of the hard-earned respect and gravitas and of the institution that was, built over decades, and you're pissing it away, and it's really regrettable. Please stop doing this. So, yeah, Adam's going to go before the Senate tomorrow, and if you want to know what's going to happen, it's very simple. He's going to go up there and he's going to tell them how to reset their passwords because they can't figure that out, and they're going to ask about their grandkids, and he's going to explain that they've got these new tools and they've always had these tools. And in fact, he's going to talk about the data that I just talked about, that the New York Times is, again, intentionally misinforming its readers about, which is about the body self-image. And Adam's going to explain, as the NPR's journalists did when they interviewed actual psychology research experts, that is not a scientific data point, that person who had that slide in that one deck out of the thousands of decks at Facebook that was shared with the Washington Post and New York Times, that was one data point out of one slide, out of one deck, out of millions that they have done. And that if you read that whole slide in its entirety, in its full context, you understand that young girls actually feel far better about themselves from Instagram if you actually look at that slide. So he's going to show them that, and they're going to say, oh, shit, I'm sorry, we wasted your time. Thank you for the full context. And hey, by the way, Wall Street Journal and New York Times, why did you intentionally distort and confuse and spread misinformation about this issue? Why are you doing that? Well, that would be interesting, because that is what happened. That is, in fact, what has led to him now having to go and explain this issue, because they read it in the New York Times. And we know that because they said so when arranging this hearing. When asked about why are you asking Instagram to come in and give this Senate hearing, they said because we read in the New York Times that this is harming young girls. Well, it turns out the New York Times lied to you, as anyone would know who did the deep dive on this issue, as we have done extensively multiple times.
Yeah, and we were actually on the side of the journalists that
We were
were actually trying to.
exactly right.
Yeah, almost, almost.
We were so in favor when the whistleblower leaks started happening that we actually reached out to the journalist at the Wall Street Journal to applaud him. That we thought, hey, this is great. If you're going to be intellectually honest about, the wrongs and errors, and there's no shortage of them with Facebook, we could go on for days about them ourselves. But you don't need to manufacture false narratives to attack Facebook and Instagram. There's plenty of legitimate reasons to be very, very critical of them. But when you overstep and start creating false narratives, then, well, in this case, it stuck. It did spread. They created the headlines that Instagram hurts young girls, and that meme stuck. And it was because Facebook took several days to counter that narrative with the facts and showed the actual slide where they took that headline from. And interestingly, the publications who all reported and parroted and repeated that headline, none of them shared the actual slide with the actual data. And Facebook itself had to come out and say, are you guys talking about this slide? Because if you want to talk about the slide, we would love to talk about this slide. But it looks like you want to talk about one data point out of about 30 on this slide. But when you talk about all 30 of the data points on this slide, it makes your one data point that you're cherry picking completely evaporate. And that's why you don't want to share the slide. And that's why we do want to share the slide, because there's this thing called context, and we think it matters. But it doesn't matter to the New York Times, because they're thirsty for clicks, because Facebook's stealing their money. And now you know why the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post are united in their economic terrorism jihad against Facebook. Because Facebook stole all their money. And now you know why they're not attacking TikTok, who isn't really stealing their money. And now you know why the BBC is willing to tell the truth about what's going on at Facebook, because BBC isn't economically being going head to head with Facebook. They get their money by another means. So Tina's got her hand up here. She wants the mic here. So what's going on, Tina? Let's welcome Tina back to the stage here in Twitter.
Is that on Twitter?
Yeah, she's in Twitter. What's going on, Tina?
Hey, Tyler. Thanks. So I had a question about this. The more I start to think about it, are we going to have to start using the government as sort of like consumer reports for the media nowadays? And I don't know why I just keep I'm starting to get really disillusioned is not the right word, but it's like I'm starting to wonder. It's like, and because I've heard this rant from you now, you know, for a while, and I completely agree. But it's like, is that the only recourse we have against this sort of cherry picking of data that obviously is being spoon fed to us? And there's a lot of people who don't have the time as we do to sort of go through it and try and understand exactly what are we not being told. But is that now going to become the I hate to say rule of government, or like their job is to try and sort of disseminate this information for us to try and show us what we're not being shown? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's an interesting
question. It just sucks.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit, and because so many of us, and I believe, like, get peer reviewed, and you have to be so understanding and so sure about what you're saying. It kind of feels almost weird to see that people who are journalists, who, like, language is their life, right? So they write to either tell the truth or expose the truth, and some of it gets warped and twisted in this new game that it's now become media, and I'm still trying to get to grasp with how to explain it to people that are on the more scientific side and analytical side, where it's like the certainty is so low with media today that you have to create and cross-reference sources and resources. So, and that was even one of the reasons that attracted me to tech news, which is like the ability to have the expertise right on cue. And you can't do this particular thing that the Wall Street Journal's doing anywhere else. Just as in the first article, I believe Tyler was talking about someone who was a consultant for McKinsey, or and he was obviously someone who probably had very much expertise in that aspect, and we're not getting that with Facebook. And ever since Cambridge Analytica, there has been this, thorn in the side of Facebook that and even the governments, that we need to regulate this somehow. And every which way we turn, only the media can say stuff. And the whatever kind of crumb the government gets from the media, they attack it straight away. And obviously, in some parts, we can regard it as hostile, but in reality, it's almost fair game because the media is allowed to speak, and the truth is there, but it's just there within a narrative. So it's not like the media lied, or they just misrepresented the whole scope. And there's just a lot more at play there. But I wouldn't say the government is the only recourse. However, this is what the government wanted to do anyway with Facebook. They wanted to regulate it somehow and have them create these ordinances for parents and all of these things. But it seems like this is expediting the process, but it's a bit too late for Facebook, because if they'd done this 5 years ago, this wouldn't be the case.
Thanks, Dumbler. So I want to run through the other big headlines today because Kevin Coons and Craig Nielsen and Gabby and Chetna and Jeff G and all kinds of folks are sharing fantastic tweets that I want to get to, and which we always do. But first, we've got to finish the big headlines, which, by the way, the next one's all about China again. And before I read the next one, the Steve Kovach, who's the tech journalist for CNBC, nails this whole issue with Instagram, saying he does a tweet that I just retweeted saying Instagram is going to do a bunch of child safety stuff, a response to the Facebook papers, and announced the day before the CEO testifies before the Senate. Yep, exactly right. So the next one's Microsoft seizes 42 domains allegedly used by a Chinese cyber espionage group that targeted organizations in 29 countries, including the US. Microsoft said today that its legal team had successfully obtained a court warrant that allowed it to seize 42 domains used by a Chinese cyber espionage group called APT15. And tracked by Microsoft as Nickel, but also known under other names like APT-15, Mirage, and Vixen Panda, and others. The group has been active since 2012 and has conducted numerous operations against a broad set of targets. The Microsoft's VP of Customer Service and Customer Security and Trust said today that the recent domains had been used for, quote, intelligence gathering from government agencies, think tanks, and human rights organizations. He said the seized domains were being used to gather information and data from the hacked organizations. Quote, obtaining control of the malicious websites and redirecting traffic from those sites to Microsoft secure servers will help us protect existing and future victims while learning more about Nickel's activities. Our disruption will not prevent Nickel from continuing other hacking activities, but we do believe we have removed a key piece of the infrastructure the group has been relying on for this latest wave of attacks, according to a technology report that accompanied today's legal action and announcement. The group's victims had been hacked using compromised third-party VPNs or stolen credentials obtained from spear phishing campaigns, which is in tune with similar industry reports detailing recent tactics used by Chinese espionage groups in general. Exploitation attempts targeted Microsoft Exchange and SharePoint systems and Pulse Secure VPNs, according to Microsoft. Last week's legal action also marks the 24th lawsuit Microsoft has filed in recent years against cybercrime and cyber espionage groups. Prior to last week's domain seizures, Microsoft had also filed lawsuits that allowed the company to take control of domains previously owned by the SolarWinds hackers, COVID-19 scamming operations, APT-35 Iranian hackers, and a North Korean cyber espionage group and a Nigerian scammers. 5 of these previous legal actions targeted state-sponsored espionage groups, and Microsoft said it now seized more than 10,000 malicious websites used by cybercriminals and nearly 600 sites used by non-state actors. Okay, so the next one is Samsung merges its mobile and consumer electronics divisions into one business unit led by J.H. Han and names Kyu-Hyun Kyung as the CEO of its semiconductor unit. Next up, Twitter acquires messaging app called Quill, which will shut down after launching earlier this year to challenge Slack. And Intel plans to take its Mobileye unit public, sources say, at a $50 billion valuation. And Mac Rumors says that the United States Department of Justice has asked Roblox why it changed the word games on its website to the word experiences, and asked Roblox and other developers to clarify the difference. The United States Department of Justice is investigating Apple for antitrust issues, and Roblox is an area of interest for prosecutors attempting to put together a case. And this indeed happened during the big Epic versus Apple battle lawsuit, where all of a sudden the game companies started renaming themselves as experiences instead of as games. Investigators are looking for situations where Apple is unevenly enforcing rules for app developers, and Roblox is an area of interest because of the way the app works. Roblox is an online gaming platform that allows its users to play and program games that can be played with others. Roblox users can create a variety of mini games that can be accessed within the main Roblox app. And during the Epic versus Apple trial, Epic argued, Epic's a game company, by the way, Epic argued that Apple had given Roblox a free pass while preventing other apps from doing something similar. Epic Games equated Roblox to the Epic Games Store, an app that would serve as a third-party alternative to the App Store, offering users access to games without paying Apple's fees, as Epic offers access to major games created by other developers. This is a really interesting point, because Epic wants to make an app store full of experiences and games that you can engage in their Epic store. They want to put an Epic store inside your iPhone. And when you open the Epic Store app, click, it opens. There's a whole bunch of things to enjoy. When you open the Roblox app, click, you go in. Similarly, you have a whole bunch of experiences to explore. But interestingly, Apple won't allow Epic to have their own app store on your iPhone. But Roblox, it not only is able to exist on the iPhone, but apparently, according to Epic, Roblox isn't paying Apple the 30% tax for the things that are going on. So after coming up with the it's not quite the same as the rule again. After coming up in the Epic versus Epic trial, Roblox altered its website to clarify that it offers experiences instead of games, because Apple told it to. Apple said, hey, guess what? Can you do us a favor? Yeah. Change your website. Anytime it says games, change it to experiences, so that we don't get in deep shit, because Epic makes games. The name of the company is Epic Games. Hint, hint, the name's in the title of the company, the name of the company. So Epic Games wants to make a game app store, and we need you as our partner that we're giving a free pass to, Roblox, to rebrand yourself away from games and call yourself an experience, to create a little more distance. And so now the DOJ is asking Roblox, hey, why did you change your name to experience? Why did you change the word games to experience on your website and everywhere else? Why are you referring to everything as experience? And the honest answer is because Apple told us to. Yeah.
But maybe this is also because of the metaverse craze that everybody's trying to position themselves as the original verse that the metaverse came from. And Roblox certainly has some grounds into that, where, they do provide you with virtual environments where people meet and greet and have fun, and they go to this virtual high school and whatever. So all that stuff that the metaverse promises might have already been there or explored in Roblox, and maybe that's why they're changing their
let me read the next paragraph, and let's see how you think about that after I read this next paragraph. After coming up in the Epic versus Apple trial, Roblox altered its website to clarify that it offers experiences instead of games, a change made after App Store executive explained during the case that Roblox did not violate App Store rules because Apple did not view Roblox content as a game. The App Store executive said that the experiences within Roblox were similar to the experiences in Minecraft, another game where users can build mini game like content. And then magic presto, shortly after that, Apple's App Store executive said that they see Roblox as an experience and not a game. They changed every mention from games to experiences on their sites and everywhere else. Coincidence?
No, I don't think it's a coincidence, but I think they got some coaching into doing that, and now this plays in very well with Facebook's drive into the metaverse.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that they want to everyone is simultaneously kind of rebranding things in a metaversial context. I take your point there. The Department of Justice has been taking a look at details brought up by the Epic versus Epic trial and recently asked Roblox and other developers to clarify the difference between a game and an experience. Roblox has been asked to explain why it changed the language on its website. Well, we know goddamn well why, because Apple told them to. Apple Arcade appears to be a topic of interest as well, with investigators asking developers whether the Apple Arcade game store has made it more difficult for developers to compete with Apple. The Department of Justice also looking into complaints that Apple has restricted location access for third-party apps while still allowing its own apps and services full access to location data. Yeah, of course, obviously it does that. So,
have you seen the Apple Arcade, Tyler? Did you have a chance to play around with it?
I haven't touched a game since '92 when I won the West Coast Light Cycle Champions for Tron 2.
Very nice. Okay, so if you look at it, you'll discover that they have some games that appear to be very similar to those emulation games that are being circulated everywhere on the internet. Like you download the emulator and now you play Sega games or Nintendo games. A lot of the games show something like that. Maybe it's just the retro look that they are after, but they look very much like these emulations. Maybe they got the rights to include the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog original Sega game, including original soundtrack and Sega, the little chant that comes with it. So very interesting approach to games there. Not only they're fantastic new games, but those old arcade games that people used to like from the 90s and 80s.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Very interesting.
Let's jump into this next one. This is a doozy. I'm going to pin it in Clubhouse. Cheryl, could you please pin it in Twitter Spaces? This is a doozy, everybody. Hold on tight. Let me pin it first. Here we go. Is it coming? Is it going? There it goes. Here it is. Here we go. It says the popular family safety app called Life 360 is selling your precise location data, and it's to its other tens of millions of users. It's now being revealed for the first time that Life 360, anyone using Life 360, you want to flash your mics? No? No one's using Life 360?
Not still using it. Not still using it.
You're using it. Okay, good. Well,
No, not using it. My wife did for a little while, and then we switched to something else.
okay, well, let me get wait, hang on. Where did this article go? Hold on. Hold on here. Life 360. Let's read this one through here. Where did it go? Where did you go?
Isn't that part of Microsoft Live 360?
I don't think so.
That's Life as in LIFE.
Yeah.
Microsoft is Live.
Live. There you go. So the popular family safety app, Life 360, thank you, Evan, LIFE, is selling precise location data of its tens of millions of users. The app is a major source of raw location data for a multi-billion-dollar industry that buys, packages, and sells people's movements. Life 360, used by 33 million people, has been marketed as a great way for parents to track their children's movements using their cell phones. This publication, where I'm reading this from, called The Markup, has learned, however, that the app is selling data on kids and families' whereabouts to approximately a dozen data brokers who have sold data to virtually anyone who wants to buy it. Through interviews with 2 former employees of the company, along with 2 individuals who formerly worked at location data brokers, the Markup discovered that the app acts as a fire hose of data for a controversial industry that has operated in the shadows with few safeguards to prevent the misuse of its sensitive information. The former employees spoke with the Markup on the condition that we not use their names, as they are still employed in the data industry. They said they agreed to talk because of concerns that the location data industry's security and privacy, and desire to shed more light on the opaque location data economy. All of them describe Life 360 as one of the largest sources of data in the industry. Quote, "We have no means to confirm nor deny the accuracy of whether Life 360 is among the largest sources of data in the industry," Life 360 founder and CEO Chris Hulls said in an emailed response to questions from the Markup. Quote, "We see data as an important part of our business model that allows us to keep the core Life 360 service free for the majority of our users." Oh, shit. You sneaky son of a bitch. You're the product. They sold your data. And now you know why Life 360 was free, a free way for you to track your kids, because they're selling your kids in your location as well. Sneaky.
That's a bit sick, isn't it? That's crazy. It's a bit of a sick move.
A former X mode, we see the data as an important, including features that have improved driver safety and say, oh, of course, you're saving numerous lives and it's improved driver safety. Yeah, well, kudos to you guys. You guys are.
The ironic part is a lot of the buyers of that data are government agencies, police,
correct,
FBI.
Okay.
Because they want to track suspects. So it's kind of a crazy relationship.
My first question is, how do you protect kids by selling data? But yeah, it's interesting.
And now the what was his Jesse Smollett? What's his name?
Yeah, that's it. You got it right.
The guys that he hired, were very confused about how they were caught so quickly, and maybe they were on Live 360. A former X Mode engineer said,
Good one.
A former X Mode engineer said the raw location data the company received from Life 360 was among X Mode's most favorable offering due to the sheer volume and precision of the data. Yeah, it knows exactly where you are. A former Cubic employee joked that the company wouldn't be able to run its marketing campaigns without Life 360's constant flow of location data. Yeah, so by the way, what's interesting is we read a similar headline 24 hours ago. Does anyone remember the name of the company? Of
Google Maps?
No, it was where the CEO is basically created a sister shell company where he's selling all of the data from the parent company. And then the journalist asked the spokesperson, and the spokesperson's like, well, let's be clear, this is not our company who's doing this. It's, You guys
I
remember
saw
this?
that in tweets. Let me
Yeah, it was.
find it. But I didn't
Oh,
remember it.
it was all about SMSs. It was massive. It's basically all SMSs that, including inside of Google, Facebook, uh, all of the verification codes that users get for all the apps that they use. The company who empowers that was selling all of the data in the back end, which is unbelievable. So this is a daily, now 2 days in a row, where a company is basically head faking everybody and selling all kinds of shady dataness.
Yeah, my thing is that, and I'll keep it short because I know we need to get through. Is that even when you're on a subscription model where you're paying directly for it, and in quotes, the app is no longer free for you, your data is still getting sold at our Spotify, where all of the data they've collected on just the psychograph of their consumers and listeners and streamers is being sold back to the record companies for them to understand what they can make to make a better profit, and even more so how to keep people on app. So I don't see how, even when we're in a subscription model, which is where we're going to, right, how the data is not going to be sold. And it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so let's power through these because we got some really good tweets to get into.
Tyler, yesterday, I believe Google Maps have added this new feature where you can have a loved one track you if you so wish.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's going to be relevant. Uh, it's a cool new tool. Looks like this feature is finding its way to many apps, including most of the family safety apps,
Yeah,
regardless of who the company is.
Maybe Google knew that this.
Uber added that as well, didn't they?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. So BB found the article from yesterday. The company's called Mito, and we read it, and it's a Swiss company. And give me 2 seconds. Mito, you got it. This article was incredible. This is, it's amazing that this didn't get even much bigger than it did. So, Swiss firm executive operates secret surveillance operation. Mito's network used to track people via mobile phones, former employees say. The co-founder of the company the co-founder of a company that has been trusted by technology giants including Google and Twitter to deliver sensitive passwords to millions of their customers, also operated a service that ultimately helped governments secretly surveil and track mobile phones, according to former employees and clients. Since 2013, Mito has established itself as a provider of automated text messages for things like security codes and reminders, and telling customers that the text messages are more likely to be read and engaged than emails, blah, blah, blah. Mito. Bloomberg News investigation carried out in collaboration with London-based Bureau of Investigative Journalism indicated that the company's co-founder and chief operating officer was also providing another service selling access to Mito's networks to secretly locate people via their mobile phones. We're talking hundreds of millions of people.
I think because the customers, including Google, Twitter, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and Telegram, and China's TikTok, Tencent, Alibaba, all the big names.
Yeah, it's every big app. So, thank you for finding that, BB. I'm amazed that didn't get more attention. It's basically everybody's location is discernible at all times there. Oh shit! Did I just shut down the Twitter space? Oh my god, I'm an idiot.
Tyler.
Really? But I can still see it.
It's still open?
Yeah, I
Everybody
can
on
still see it.
Clubhouse
Yeah, it's
talk.
still open.
Oh, it's still there.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
there, still
Great.
open,
Okay,
Tyler.
great. There it is. I got it. I'm back in now. Okay. All right. Sorry about that,
But
everybody. I accidentally closed the Twitter app. Don't do that if you're hosting a room, by the way. So,
And it was fun to hear the admission.
the next article I wanted to get into is Discord begins testing premium memberships, which lets creators monetize servers through tiered perks.
Tyler,
Yes, Cheryl?
I just got a news 5 minutes ago that Mito AG FDPIC opens preliminary investigation.
Yep.
On it.
Well, that's because of the headline news yesterday that we just read, that they were created a shadow company to leak all of the data of hundreds of millions of individuals, and now they're going to be in some deep shit. That dude's probably going to jail, actually. So the next one is as I said, Discord begins testing premium memberships, and that's great for the content creators on Discord. That's a whole new revenue stream for
We
them.
already have Nitro. I don't know if this is going to be different from Nitro,
Yeah,
whatever service that they've got.
it is. It's additional stuff. You'll soon be able to subscribe directly to Discord servers, and on a subscription basis. A company called Quantinium recently spun off from Honeywell claims it has created the first quantum-generated encryption key, which can't be predicted. The company says quantum computing power improves security and product to compete against offerings from Amazon and Microsoft. Next one is a company called Anyscale, which helps apps run efficiently across distributed infrastructure, raises $100 million by Andreessen Horowitz. A company called Circle, a community platform where creators can manage content and memberships, raises $24 million from Tiger Global. And Intel plans to take, we covered that one. And then The Verge is doing a hands-on review of the new Snap Spectacles, Snapchat's AR glasses, announced in May. Lightweight, bold design, and impressive AR, but overheating and 30-minute battery shows why they aren't on sale. And a company called Majority, a mobile banking service serving migrants to the U.S., raises $27 million. And what else do we got? NFT data shows price differences based on race and gender. The average minimum sale price of darker-skinned male CryptoPunks trails lighter ones. So the CryptoPunks are racist. There we go. There's a hot take.
What? How did that even?
Well, maybe not so much the punks, but the buyers themselves. It says that NFT data shows price differences based on race and gender. The average minimum sale price of darker-skinned male CryptoPunks trails lighter ones. Okay, well,
people are more likely to buy something that looks like them anyways, or invest into, I should say.
Let's see what it says. The complexities of the real world are starting to bleed into the metaverse. The virtual arena where identity functions as both a reflection on and determinant of social capital. Differences in prices for digital avatars based on race, gender, and skin color are emerging among popular collections of NFTs known as CryptoPunks, belying the utopian and egalitarian ideals touted by the closely connected world of crypto, decentralized finance, blockchain, and NFTs. According to both participants and observers of the space, these price discrepancies are partly explained by the lack of diversity among investors who favor these status assets. It's a demographic that skews mostly male and white. Female CryptoPunks and those with darker skin colorings tend to sell for less than avatars with male traits or fair skin. CryptoPunk investors say the price disparity is not a function of individual prejudice or racism, but the fact that the people currently willing and able to pay top dollar for digital goods aren't bidding on avatars that don't look like them. Quote, if you look at the blockchain space, it largely tends to be white, it largely tends to be male, said Tony Herrera, an immigrant activist in California who owns 60 CryptoPunks. Holy shit, that's a lot of CryptoPunks for one person to own. One punk could be dark and one could be light, and the lighter one is going to be more desirable, he said.
This is why people lean to creating more animal-related crypto assets, because they don't have race, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be dogs versus cats. We'll find something to,
I
so.
agree. Exactly. I'm not buying any dogs, only cats.
Dogs versus cats, apes versus chimps. Like, it's all going to be so cyclical in just relation and what people care about.
The New Yorker just released a piece about someone named James Howells, who lives in Wales, UK, who has been in a desperate effort to excavate his local landfill to recover a hard drive with 80,000 bitcoins that he mined in 2013. I'm sorry, 8,000.
Poor guy.
8,000. Hey Siri, what's 8,000 times 50,000?
It's 50 million.
No, that's 1,000 times 50,000.
Not correct.
It'd be 400 million. So, 400 million.
I guess it's worth it.
Yeah, that's enough to at least pay a few. I don't know that he needs to dig through the landfill. He could pay a few people to do that. Good luck to him. And what else do we got? AWS outage that began around 10:45 Eastern Time has led to disruptions for many services, including Disney Plus, Tinder, Roku, Coinbase, Cash App, Amazon Music, and Venmo. Amazon says it is working towards the solution. Atomico, who I spoke with today.
We have an AWS expert actually from Amazon. I guess I don't know if he's in the room, but he may be able to give us an update.
Hmm?
Anyway,
Anyone from AWS in the house? I could ping in some friends from AWS easily. Yeah, I mean, they had an outage. I don't necessarily want to embarrass them at their kick them while they're down.
yeah, they're probably in a war room now.
They probably got better things to do. But also, in all fairness, AWS has a rather spectacular record of not being down. In all fairness, so
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, if it goes down again in the next year, then it'll be like, oh shit, you went down twice in a year. But I'm sure they're feeling, justifiably embarrassed. The next one is from CNBC that Atomico, which is a VC firm run by friends of mine in London who are actually Swedes. Hello, Nicholas, and Matthias just stepped down to start his own new fund called Moonfire, and I'm very fond of the Atomico crew, and I just messaged with them today about being the guest at my monthly event, and they said they would like to do it in March. So it looks like Atomico will be my special guest for March here in Stockholm. Anyway, Atomico releases the European a report that they do every year, by the way, this week every year. And the report just came out, and one of the main findings from the report is that European tech startups will raise a record in 2021. That's no surprise at all. If you've been following, tech news around the world, you know that every city is having record fundraisings in 2021. And the question is, how much better? Well, check this out. So European tech startups in 2020 raised $41 billion. And that was fantastic. What do we think European startups have raised in 2021? So last year was 41 billion, a fantastic number. And let's make it official and play our favorite game. You know it, you love it. Watch out for Messi. She wins every time. So, how much money did European tech startups raise in 2021? Last year was 41 billion. There's your hint.
41 to, I would say maybe 60 this year.
Yeah, I would say 70 or 80.
50.
Yeah, I was at
say
78.
100 or over.
I'd say
$100 billion.
120.
All right, I think Carl wants to take a guess. Carl?
I was just going to be the outlier and say 100.
121 billion. 300% in 1 year.
The
Hey,
Miller.
Carla, I got it right.
The
No,
Miller,
I
you
think
won.
Demiller has that. Didn't you say 120, Demiller?
Yeah, he said 120.
Oh, Demiller.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said it. It's Asim.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh,
All right.
Professor Asif, you
Yes,
won.
except you won.
So, it says 98 unicorns were created. So about twice what India did. Nearly exactly twice what India did. And for all of Europe. It's unbelievable. India is just unbelievable. But Europe as well. The fact that both India and Europe are both having just unimaginably strong breakthrough, investments, and both totally deserve it. It speaks to how, from the European perspective, the gravity of Silicon Valley as the mecca of, tech, that has officially been broken, as a lot of the entrepreneurs and notably investors have moved on to other places, and the focus has shifted, and you no longer have to travel to Mecca to play in the tech game. So
there are plenty of mini Meccas, right?
There's plenty. And India and Europe are really getting, what they deserve, I feel. And it's a beautiful thing that tech is going global in this way. So kudos to all my European tech friends. and kudos to Atomico for this, keeping the data on all of this. There's many partners involved in this report.
Tyler,
Yes.
where in Europe are the key places?
I'm sure this report would lay that out for you perfectly. And it's London, Paris, Berlin, and Stockholm are usually kind of tied for third, sort of in that order.
I know. This is not as big number as Europe, but for Africa as well, there was a huge record-breaking fundraising that happened this year. The startup ecosystem, I think, raised over a 4 billion mark, which is ever the first time, and tech, especially fintech, is the leader. With over billion, 1.3 or something billion. Yeah, for Africa, that's huge venture capital going into the continent for the first time.
So, oh, by the way, the first thing that they talk about in the European tech boom is my dear friend Peter Carlson from Northvolt, who I spoke with today. So it says Northvolt took the top spot for the biggest fundraising round the second year in a row. Sweden's sustainable battery startup Northvolt came home with the biggest check by quite some way and saw its fintech darling Klarna hit the podium too. So both Klarna and Northvolt were two of the biggest fundraisings in Europe in 2021. And that's part of the big reason for the huge boost this year. Yeah. Congrats to Peter and Sebastian at Klarna and all my buddies, all my bros, making the billions. So the next one is, by the way, if anyone who's interested in that report, it's called the State of European Tech 2021. And they, as I mentioned, they've done it now every year. This is about the fourth year, maybe the fifth year they've done it. And the big takeaways were that the European funding broke 100 billion. Northvolt took the top spot for the biggest fundraise for the second year in a row. Europe is making gains on the US, starting with the earliest stages. The total value of the ecosystem crossed 3 trillion. The planet positive and purpose-driven startups beginning to be taken seriously, which, by the way, that's where Stockholm is really leading, is on the, whatever you want to call it, impact investing or what have you. The city itself, I just had a meeting about this with the city where the mayor and the business development office for Stockholm, and we're all kind of united around branding Stockholm as the epicenter of impact investing, which it disproportionately is. And that is the theme for my monthly event in Stockholm, which happens to be a week from right now. So next Tuesday, I'll be on.
So Tyler, US is now in the third place?
No.
And you said India, Europe, and then US?
No. The US.
No?
No. 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 The net, what's the Portland-based? White House officials met with Google, AT&T, Cloudflare, Mandiant, and others in Silicon Valley to discuss combating state-sponsored hackers and criminal gangs. As cyber threats from countries like Russia multiply, officials met with corporate executives to pitch their vision for operational collaboration. So the White House meeting again. They've already met before about this, and they continue to meet about this. So the U.S. is starting to take cybersecurity very, very seriously. Hummingbird, which sells anti-money laundering tools to banks and fintechs, raises $30 million. And those are your big, boring headlines for today. If I'm correct, Cheryl, autonomous sidewalk delivery company called Serve Robotics raises $13 million from Uber and others, because Uber will use those robots to deliver your orders in the future, as I've told you many times over many months. And Facebook will prioritize selling its products directly on its apps starting next year in 2022, partially in response to Apple's in-app purchases. Yeah, no shit. They don't want to pay Apple 30% tax for that stuff. AI research regularly reuses a small number of machine learning data sets, and a few institutions like Stanford, Microsoft, Princeton, Facebook, Google, Max Planck and AT&T. Oh, that's where the data sets are from. Okay. There we go. So now we get into the tweets, as promised. With 15 minutes left, Kevin found a really interesting one. I don't know if he's still with us.
I'm here.
Okay, you want to do miscarriage rates triple for women with top radiation exposure from Reuters, as you've warned us.
Yep. And this is connecting to Kamala Harris. You know, she got a lot of flack on Twitter today and yesterday. People saying, oh, she doesn't like Bluetooth headphones. She only wears wired headphones. Why is this? It's a security thing. And really, it's the media kind of missing the real crux of the argument, which is, you got to remember, Kamala Harris was the DA in San Francisco when Gavin Newsom was passing cell phone safety bill called Right to Know, telling people what's in their manual, saying use a wired earpiece if you want to prevent radiation exposure. And so today she's doing, Kamala Harris is doing a whole meeting all about maternity and trying to keep people safe. And so I said, hey, this is a great opportunity to talk about pregnancy and wireless radiation. And yeah, it's sad to see our government officials not wanting to speak up on this. They want to keep themselves safe and protected, but don't really want to ring the bell when you need those tech dollars to run in a couple of years if you're going to run for president or vice president again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, interesting article.
Yeah. Okay. So next is from Evan from CNBC that Amazon's making its own shipping containers and bypassing supply chain chaos with chartered ships and long haul planes. Yep, they're taking the whole thing into their own hands so that they can make sure the deliveries happen on time because they don't trust all the shenanigans going on with all the global logistics, and they want to own that shit just like they own all of the trucks that deliver all the stuff to your house now. And they used to outsource that to FedEx and UPS and DHL and everybody else, and they're eventually going to take it all over.
I do have one hopeful thing with this. I know everybody thinks of Amazon and they are, this massive evil corporation, and true that, but often when you have tech companies like this taking over, there's one good thing that happens is innovation for like efficiencies, right? Like the shipping industry is pretty archaic in a lot of the things that it does. You'd actually be surprised how many of the shipping routes and everything else are run by companies who still mostly rely on paper and whatnot, and on actual physical hard copies of things, and people opening books trying to find routes as opposed to intelligent software. But the point is, if Amazon are doing this, the plus side is they're going to want to make it as efficient as possible. They're going to want to make it, as fast as possible. They're going to want to maybe look into some of the tech that's into manufacturing the containers and how they're distributed and that sort of thing. So, hopefully there's going to be a positive from this.
Okay.
Right, and they'll probably have additional, same as Amazon does. They build out their infrastructure, then they use that and lease it to others, so they make it a profit center, so they can also, as you say, make it more efficient and create space for others. And exactly the shipping and all this transportation, shipping, railroads, etc., are super antiquated, and actually it's pretty dangerous. Especially in like this whole cyber world. So yeah, it'll be interesting. This will be good.
I've worked in this industry. I've built SaaS applications for this, and I can tell you, a lot of the time it's a complete shit show, and that's putting it really mildly.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
So Manaz found one related to all of these European unicorns. The Wall Street Journal reports, the headline says, Europe now tops China in spawning unicorns in 2021. China has reined in its most successful and free-wheeling tech giants, including Alibaba, Tencent, Didi, casting a chill across the whole sector in China. Yep, that's what will happen. Is if you're an entrepreneur in China, you're either thinking how to leave or to go into some other industry when you're watching all of the big Chinese tech companies get the poo-poo beat out of them. And
from tutorial to
or disappearing.
Well,
tutorial.
If you want to do finger painting with Uncle Jack, you can.
CCP retreats.
Yeah.
Wellness retreats. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so then the next one is from Jeff G. That TSMC and Intel, kind of the two big gorillas, along with Samsung, in the chip world, are in a rare public spat over U.S. chip making. Samsung is getting Intel will publicly list shares. Oh, here it is. The chip beef. In the U.S., there's been a lot of talk about supporting American chip making. It's a matter of national security. Politicians have become fond of saying, not to mention a way to address future shortages. But the chip industry is highly globalized, meaning that this new patriotic fervor has led to some uncomfortable moments, particularly for the global leader, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, known as TSMC. For months, Santa Clara, California-based Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger has said, saying that it's risky for the U.S. to rely too heavily on Asian chip makers. He's argued that the American government should only subsidize domestic players with the new $52 billion CHIPS Act. Gelsinger hammered away at the same point again last Wednesday, saying that China's military threat against Taiwan makes the island unstable. On Friday, TSMC fired back. It was the first time that I or any experts I talked with can recall a Taiwanese giant admonishing a customer, which is Intel. Quote, not too many people will believe what Intel says, TSMC chairman Mark Liu told reporters on the sideline of a tech forum in Taipei. He added that TSMC does not attack its peers. Previously, TSMC executives have almost always described Intel as a customer rather than as a peer, as a show of respect. Quote, it will be very negative for the United States to subsidize only American companies, Liu said. Unlike Intel, TSMC is very positive about non-U.S. chip makers expanding capacity in America. It is a great thing. This shows our decision 2 years ago to build a new factory in Arizona, that it was correct. TSMC is currently building a $12 billion manufacturing facility in Arizona, blah, 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 blah. So that was the spat. The chip beef. Thank you for that one, Jeff. The next one's also from Jeff G., from the Wall Street Journal. Elon Musk comes out against federal electric vehicle spending. Elon Musk took aim at the signature Biden administration legislative proposal and said China is adjusting its growing position as a dominant world power in EVs. And Elon Musk took aim at the Tesla chief executive criticized federal efforts meant to spur electronic vehicle adoption, including a bill that would boost incentives for buying battery-powered cars. The House passed a roughly $2 trillion social spending and climate bill championed by President Biden that would give consumers a tax credit as much as $12,500 if they buy an electric vehicle assembled by union workers. Oh, well, now we know why Tesla's against it, because this $12,500 is for an EV, but basically any EV that's not a Tesla. That's kind of some shady shit right there.
Yeah, why is that?
Yeah, that was a major Detroit political win.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, that is shady. That is like serious deference for certain industry, for certain players.
Well, there's a little more to that story, and that's that, Tesla reached its market cap on auto credits, tax auto credits for individuals in America, and the other automakers have not yet.
Wait, can you repeat that, please? Because I thought it was important.
So when they started doing this tax rebate program in America, there was a auto vehicle limit for each, for each brand. Tesla already reached theirs because so many Teslas sold. And so now, like, even if this bill was not implemented, now if an American goes to buy Tesla, they would be forced, in order to get the credit that currently exists, they would be forced to buy another type of car, which the brand limit has not been reached yet. And so this is just an adjustment to what was already going on. It makes it unfair, but I think in order for electric vehicles to be adopted mainstream in America, they needed to increase the incentive in addition to change the infrastructure, in addition to getting the power companies ready for the increased demand.
We got to run through the next, because I got to jump in 6 minutes for a phone call. The next one is from Craig Nielsen, that Jack Dorsey's new Bitcoin startup called Spiral releases, which is part of the Square, which is now called Block, releases Lightning Development Kit with the goal of making Bitcoin the money of the internet. Told you! That's my prediction come true, number 5,872, if you're keeping score. Yep, Jack wants to make Bitcoin the currency of the internet. Told you. I've told you many times. I've told you, I don't know, a dozen times. So, and there's your daily move in that direction. make no mistake, this vision has been incredibly clear from the beginning since my Twitter space room with Twitter CFO Ned, where I said exactly that. Would Jack Dorsey make Bitcoin the default currency for all transactions inside of Twitter and Square for all Twitter accounts? Because simultaneously, Twitter's now going to be selling stuff through social commerce. You're going to be able to create little shops inside of Twitter and sell all kinds of shit. And you want to know what it looks like? It looks like a little swiping carousel of items underneath your bio before your top tweet. You'll be able to put in an endless carousel of swipeable stuff that people can click and buy shit. And they're going to be able to pay you in Bitcoin. And they're going to be able to tip you in your tip jar in Bitcoin. And you can do that right now in my account if you want to see what that looks like. You can click on me or the Tech News Twitter account and tip us in Bitcoin right now. Go ahead and do that. Go ahead and send me a Bitcoin right now. Just one. I don't want all your Bitcoin. Just send
will you send 5 back?
One.
in time.
Will you pay us, Tyler?
If I understand correctly.
Tyler, how about you start paying
8,000.
us?
I promise to send you back 5 Bitcoin someday.
Something like a triangle scheme? A triangle?
And it also brought, that thought back to my mind. What Discord opening up that payment was opening up to Bitcoin as well, or just fiat money?
Okay. Gabby sent in this one that carjackers are using Apple AirTags to track high-end vehicles to steal them later. So they see a nice car at the shopping mall. Oh, somebody just sent me some money in the Cash App. Ishmael, thank you very much. I think it was Bitcoin, in fact. $1 worth of Bitcoin, Ishmael. Ishmael sent you $1, according to the Cash App.
Wow, that worked.
Thank you very much for that. Let me see. Except $1.
How much is the gas fee?
Well, there wouldn't be any in this case. That's Ethereum you're referring to. So there we go. Ishmael, payment from it looks like from your I don't know if it's cash or what currency it came in. It just says $1. Anyway, thank you for that, Ishmael. So the next one that Gabby sent about the carjackers using Apple AirTags is they find, a nice car at a supermarket or a shopping mall that they want to steal later when the person's asleep. So they leave an AirTag, they follow, and then they know where the car's parked overnight, and then they steal it. So there you go. Then,
Yo.
There's no
They've
real
been
way
doing that
around
with
that
bike
either. Like,
Cisco for a
as
long
annoying
time.
as there's nothing you can do about it. Like, it's serving its purpose, the tag is.
right.
The underworld will always find a way.
So
That's not even that creative. I mean, I'm saying they've been doing that in San Francisco with high-end bikes for a long time. Like they'll see a bike on a car, just follow it, see where it goes, come back later, because it's worth a lot of money. So
Chetna sends in this one that a U.S. boss fires 900 employees over Zoom. And simple as that. The next one's from Evan, that your face is or will be your boarding pass. If it's been a year or more since you traveled, particularly internationally, you may notice something different at airports in the near future, which is, they're going to scan your face. Yeah, they've been doing that in Asia.
Emirates has been doing this for years in the UAE. You just go from the lounge right through.
Yep. And then Evan sent in this one that I'm retweeting, that Elon Musk says it's possible to test Neuralink on humans next year. That's the brain-computer interface. And that's the platform after the metaverse. So we just ended the 12 years of the smartphone. We're going to do 12 years of the metaverse with hardware. And then we're going to have the next platform after the metaverse, which is going to be BCI, brain-computer interfaces a la Neuralink.
Immersion.
Now,
maybe this is a self-accelerating exponential, so it's going to be 6 years and 3 years and 1.5 year.
Oh wow!
Yep, as technology does,
and then we're done. Right? No more platforms.
Right, the last platform. So
chipping your brain, really.
The next
Unimai.
I got 2 more. Here we go. The Rohingya, who are the Muslim minority in the northwest corner of Myanmar, aka Burma. That whole crazy, insane scenario of the friction between the Rohingyas and the Burmese military, where the Burmese military has been reported are causing a bit of a humanitarian crisis and a bit of a genocide by pushing them back into Bangladesh. The Rohingya, that whole skirmish happened on Facebook, and that's not a surprise because in that part of the world, Facebook is literally the internet because Facebook pays for the connectivity on your device. So if you have a smartphone and you install the Facebook app, Facebook will pay for your data and only for data in the Facebook app. So in that part of the world, again, Facebook is the internet. So this is not a surprise that this happened on Facebook. It couldn't have happened in any other app. So the Rohingya are now accusing Facebook of promoting hate speech and is now suing Facebook for $150 billion. Facebook is being sued in a California court by Rohingya refugees who accuse the social media platform of failing to combat hate speech. In a $150 billion lawsuit, court documents allege Facebook is powered by algorithms that allow the seeds of disinformation and extremism to grow and cross over into real life violence. And honestly, that kind of is what happened in this case.
Yeah.
What's interesting is if this goes before a jury, I can imagine it won't be hard to find a jury that will award this.
Yeah. This
Now,
this
but
probably should be
however,
even.
I'm really curious to see, because it's no doubt a class action suit, the class action lawyer, I'm willing to bet, is not a Rohingya. I'll bet the class action attorney is probably of the demographic I'll leave to your imagination, and I bet that attorney ends up taking the bulk majority of all of this money.
Yeah, yeah. A demographic would be ambulance chaser, and definitely will be taking at least a third, if not more.
Yeah.
I would like,
And this is really what we should be fighting against Facebook for, just to circle back to our beginning 1 hour conversation, which is Facebook needs to fix up in many areas and not be, hunted down for doesn't really concern many people.
okay, now I have a call to get to, but I saved the best for last. And I'm pinning it to the top of the clubhouse room just so you know I'm not pulling your pants. Let's hope it comes through. There it is. And just to give you a taste of just how weird this part of the world is, 100. It's pinned. I've got the receipts. 168 soldiers in Thailand were forced to masturbate to completion as a group before showering.
What?
More than 160 Thai soldiers were, quote, apparently forced to masturbate and climax before they were allowed to take a shower. At least that's what the social media user claims. Numerous Thai media outlets have reported the story. And on Facebook, a screenshot was shared and picked up by Thai media of soldiers sitting together with a caption in Thai, which translates to, quote, this week of masturbation check. Finish your masturbate first, then you will be allowed to shower. Do it together as 168 members.
Well, being in the military is a hard job.
Oh my god.
What was the reason? I don't
It's a
get it.
real tug of war, isn't it?
Is this going to be a new requirement to join tech news around the world?
If they can do it right away, want to do.
I could have gone forever
Can it
without
Maybe
that
we
get
should
this
class.
stop here.
stressful?
On Facebook, many Thai people have been revealing their own experiences in the military and saying that they have experienced situations like this while in service, as well as other accounts of sexual harassment and abuse.
Yeah, that's quite upsetting, fairly. Like, yeah, that's weird
I'll
to
leave
be.
you.
And
I
yeah,
have to leave you with that one. I'm now 4 minutes late for my scheduled
Oh,
video call, so I will catch you all.
Tyler.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Thank you,
Tyler.
everybody.
Tyler.
Thank you.
thank you,
Tyler.
thank you,
Yes.
thank you.